For this discussion, we're going to go on freshman Congresswoman Ilhan Omar, Democrat from Minnesota. Now, as you know, I advocate for peace globally. And this is where we come in. Now, she's essentially advocating for the elimination of Israel, but not essentially in a peaceful manner, because she's essentially has stated that she's the same thing on the lines of intervention just as much in Iran as she's supporting the same interventionist that we have with neoconservatives and some of the establishment Democrats on the subject of the Iran situations. Now, this is very, very troubling, as we should understand that this she's been backed by different people stating that she was supposed to be this so-called peace candidate, and yet right out of the gate is she's coming out to not even be anywhere close to such a thing. She was backed by Peace Action as this so-called uh, peace candidate to eliminate nuclear weapons and go toward a peaceful global situation. And yet we see that right out of the gate, she's essentially advocating for uh, basically military action that would be embraced by uh, basically the neoconservatives and the pro-war hawks on both sides. And I think this needs to be addressed right away, and that people who essentially back her are essentially need to realize that what they got themselves into. And I think the people that realize that she really is essentially a religious zealot is those were the ones that were essentially right on her all along. And I'd hate to be one of those ones that I told you so with her, but that's one of the cases that she is one of these ones that wants to bring a Sunni superiority to Congress, and that's all it's really about. Because the fact is she's talking about going after Iran, she's talking about going after Israel as these religious states, yet she has no problem with Saudi Arabia and these other Sunni states as they're very, very oppressive regimes that have actually been very, very murderous. I mean, why does she have a problem with Israel being a Jewish state and Iran being a Shia state, but has no problem with Saudi Arabia, which beheads gay people and basically is pretty much has the highest number of executions in the region for basically non-legitimate crimes? And this is what we should be talking about. I mean, we can. I agree that the Israel situation is bad, but she's not even defending the fact of the intervention that's being supported going against Iran. She's essentially supporting it with her statements, saying that she supports that, and that we should also add Israel on top of it. And this shows you right where she stands, that she's just pro-Sunni and that's it. And she's this is all she backs within, and this should basically show you where she stands as a Somali Sunni Muslim. She's not going to essentially change to back anything else other than that. And this is really what we're getting. We're getting essentially a religious zealot that's in Congress, and she's not anything more than that. She's not pro-peace. She's essentially pro-Sunni, and that's really all this happens to be. And she basically wants these regions that are essentially blocking essentially a Sunni caliphate from occurring to essentially be eliminated so this Sunni caliphate can essentially grow. And this is why you're finding that she will be opposing the idea of Sunni immigrants coming to the country. She will oppose any type of blockage of them, but she will not be what I call fighting for those who are Shia. She's not going to fight for Christians. She's not going to fight for Jews. She's not going to fight for anybody else on immigration. It's not going to be in general like that. She's only going to fight for a specific group, and this is the fact. She is basically fighting for one specific group, and it's religious based, and it's basically a pretty much a religious fight that she's doing in Congress, and masking it solely as that she's fighting as a Democrat. She is not fighting as a Democrat. She's fighting as a Sunni. So basically, she's this small minority that she's going into Congress. Though what's actually quite humorous is when she was sworn in. She was sworn in on the actual Quran that was from Thomas Jefferson, when Thomas Jefferson had those to actually study these radical Sunnis. They were actually viewed as as what he felt as problematic because they were acting as pirates and actually attacking U.S. ships within areas around the borders. And this is what was happening during an earlier caliphate. So it was actually quite humorous that it was actually based off an actual study of actually Thomas Jefferson, and not that Thomas Jefferson was actually studying it for actually giving them actually legitimacy, but actually studying them to see where their beliefs were actually coming from, which is actually quite humorous that she would actually want to use that to swear in on. But beyond that point is basically we need to understand that this is totally different from the situation of Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, who actually has a lot of different views from actually not looking at violence as an option for the Jewish state, and Cortez has never denounced their right to actually exist as basically humans. She's just questioned the legitimacy to how it was formed, which is completely different. If you look at history, you can understand where that comes from, and people should be questioning that. I mean, you got to understand that this was not formed for giving Jewish people a place to live. If you believe that, you're believing of complete falsehood. The Jewish state was not. This Jewish state was not formed after World War II. It was formed after World War I, and there was no danger for Jews after World War I. This is basically a dumping ground for British Jews that were actually coming from Eastern Europe from the late 1800s, and they wanted basically a place to dump them off because they viewed them as being troublesome. And they found a place, and they felt just basically steal the land from the Palestinians. Well, since it's been over 100 years, it's complicated the issue. Well, there's basically different ways to handle it, but what way there is not is to take a violent approach, as Congresswoman as the Congresswoman from Minnesota wants to take, which is just completely asinine and not even fair to the way you would want to handle any type of situation. You should not be looking at trying to eliminate people from an actual area. I understand if we want to get rid of these religious states, we should view it as basically, and make every area secular, we should view it as basically getting rid of religious states completely. that every state should be secular and run as being non-religious, where there's no state religion itself. And that would be a wonderful idea. And I believe that there should be a time where we get to that point. But what it's going to take is those Sunni Muslim states doing that, and they're basically the majority of those countries that have an actual religious state are Sunni Muslim. They're not. There's only one Jewish state. There, as far as I know, there's only one Shia state that has that as the only religion. And frankly, you have you have a few states in which you have communism or socialism, in which they try to ban any type of religious practice. And then you have the cases where you have many secular states, or states where multiple religions can be practiced. And that's where you see that. But when you have these states where you have a state's religion, that's where you have some issues. And that I can understand why they want to get rid of that, and that would be an actual smart idea. But the fact is you need to start with where the biggest problem comes from. And if she were to suggest that all these states that have a state religion eliminate the state religion first, were to do that, then I think that's actually an excellent way to start, but that's not exactly going to happen. And she would never suggest something against the Sunni religion, because that's exactly what she's trying to advance. And if you look at what she's doing with her wording, she's not looking to essentially do anything against the Sunni religion. She's against Sunni Islam. She's only trying to attack Shia Islam and attack Jews and Christians with what she's trying to do. She's not actually doing anything for peace. She's only doing stuff to essentially enhance the Sunni Islam region within the Middle East and globally, which is why she's not for actually reacting to problems caused within Europe and caused within the Americas and caused within Asia from these Sunni populations and actually addressing them. She's only concerned with the actual expansion and actually viewing it as positive. And this is where we need to view her as not a peace candidate, but essentially a pro-war candidate. View her as no different than a Hillary Clinton, than a John McCain, than George Bush, than any of these other ones like that. These are this is basically just another war hawk that's in the Congress that just happens to be a Muslim. They're just going to be going from a Muslim perspective. And if they get any more power, they're just basically going to be pursuing more war. She basically, all she's doing is agreeing with John Bolton. The only difference is she's not pro-Israel. She's essentially pro Saudi Arabia. That's it. That's the only difference. And this is what we need to understand about her, is basically what we're getting is she's going to be pro-Sunni state, which is really not going to be much different. The only difference is you remove Israel out of the whole spectrum, and that's what you're getting. And it's not different than what you get from the extremist views of John Bolton, with extremist views of Dick Cheney, the extremist views of pretty much Netanyahu. If Netanyahu wasn't backing the idea of Israel, and if you take the idea of Israel out, pretty much that's the same views you're going to get. And you're just getting a war hawk. Now, if you want a war hawk, that's what you're getting. And frankly, these groups who are backing her, saying she's a peace candidate, they should have been doing a lot more research. because there's a lot better candidates that are going to promote peace than that. And just because she's saying that she supports these Palestinians does not necessarily mean that she necessarily supports peace. You need to really look at what she's really saying. And the fact is she's not supporting peace whatsoever. She's essentially promoting a lot of bloodshed. And that's what we need to be looking at when we look at these candidates. Is we need to be saying these people like Ilhan and Cotton and Lindsey Graham and all these ones like this, we need to be saying these people have no business making decisions because they're not fit, because they're very, very willing just to toss people out to war because they have some type of obsession with some sort of country or some sort of religion, and they feel it basically means that we have to defend a certain country, a certain country or religion or a certain belief or a certain idea, that we have to defend everything out there, or some sort of idea like that. Meanwhile, we don't, and it doesn't promote peace. It only promotes bloodshed, and people end up dying, both innocent people abroad and our soldiers here that basically have no reason to fight, and there's no stake for the United States itself. Now, if you like this, like it, subscribe, and click the bell. Share it with your friends, and share it publicly, and share it on every social media site that you could possibly think of. And I'll see you later today with another post. Bye.